So we've actually transitioned over to the next day. It took quite a long time to remove the landscaping where the bridge supports were supposed to go. And again, it's another case of, Knuckles' method. It's a very good method for making easy hills on a budget and very solid, but it is a burr if you got to go back and remove material like what I've had to do. But of course, this was a decision I chose to make because I could have easily just put the bridge supports in, landscaped around them, and basically the bridges would have been permanent to the display, but I wanted them to be removable, so that's why I went the route I did. But, I'm just going to go ahead and put the bridges in place now. And, of course, this is the first one. Get things lined up. That's in place. Good on this end. That's the first bridge. Now I'll go ahead and install the support for the second bridge. There's that. And the bridge itself. That's not straight. There we go. So, yeah, there's the two bridges, how they look right now. They still need painted and what have you. This one's a little crooked. Move that a bit. There we go. And we'll just run a truck over it real quick. Perfect. Something most of you have probably noticed since the last video is that I got the roads laid down. You can see the two lanes at the back there, and then the road that runs underneath the bridges. And to make the roads, I used roofing felt or tar paper, whatever you want to call it. Just had this on hand. And I believe you get this in 3.5 by 100 foot rolls. And it was pretty easy just to measure the roads in real life, scale them down to 1/64 scale, cut the pieces out of roofing felt, and then adhere them to the table. And to do that, I used hot glue. Here's my battery-powered glue gun, and these are the glue sticks I used. I believe these are low temperature. Yes, low temperature glue sticks. And it worked pretty well. They're nice and secured. One precaution I will say if you're using roofing felt is that it has a tendency to swell and warp if it gets wet. And I've had this happen to me in the past on display tables I've done. Of course, I was using roofing felt as a base for my tables rather than just roads, but it always settled down in the end, but I can't guarantee that others would be so lucky. So yeah, that's just something to keep in mind if you decide to go this route. But hopefully you can agree that this really gives a good look of pavement, and really if you're lazy like I am, you could just go ahead and leave this as is, but I'm going to be painting the lines on, and I will go back and paint these black because you got these lines here which I believe are from manufacturing, but it doesn't look that great, so I'm just going to go back through with some satin black paint the roads, and I'll go back through again, paint the lines on. But that comes later. The next step I think is I'm going to try to finish up laying the train track. I gotta finish cutting the pieces to size first, but get them laid here under the bridge and probably move on to laying down turf and ballast next. Alright, got the track positioned in place. I got 4 pieces, and this piece at the end here is a little bit long. I'm going to have to trim that. You can probably see I got that marked out there, but get the track to the proper length, and then I can go ahead and fix it to the table. I was thinking of using something like baseboard for a road bed, but I think I'm just going to end up gluing this down to the foam itself and leave it at that. Well, I got that piece of track cut to size, and if you want to make your life easy, a Dremel tool is the way to go for this sort of thing. I don't have a track cutter, and I'm not even sure if they make one for S-gauge track, but to lay that in place, just line it up there. You can see that is perfect. So I can go ahead and start securing the track down now. I was just looking at how the train looked next to the bridge support, and personally, just looking at that there, that honestly looks too close in my opinion. I'm not sure if that's realistically accurate or not, but whether it is or not, it just doesn't look right. So I think what I want to do is maybe move things out another 1/4 of an inch maybe. I think that'll look better. And if I just move this aside here and bring in the steam locomotive here, just line that up with my mark. There's how that compares, and again, it just looks too close in my opinion, so I'm going to move the track over another 1/4 of an inch. I moved the positioning of the track over another 1/4 inch, and this second line is the one I'm going to be following here. And I got my track, and I'm going to be gluing this to the table with hot glue here, and I'm just going to put a little bit on this end tie, and then another drop right here. I don't really need a lot of glue on this, just enough to hold it down, and one more on there. Line up the track where it needs to go. Just hold that there for a minute. And for those that are wondering, I'm using American Models track. This is American Models S-gauge track. American Models is a company, they basically, all they produce is S-gauge. And I mean, you know, you can see here's a piece of S-gauge track. Compare it to HO, you can see there's a substantial difference in gauge. And I mean, I have nothing wrong with people that use HO scale trains on their 1/64 scale train layouts, but I feel S-gauge looks more appropriate. And just gonna put some rail joiners on here, a little bit there. And this is probably going to be a little tricky, because I've got to try to push the track into the joiners. Now, unfortunately, that moved the joiners back, but that's easy to fix. Just I'll get a screwdriver here later on and push the rail joiners where I need them to be. Just gonna hold this down till the glue sets. Shouldn't take long. Line that up. So that's the tracks laid in place and glued down to the table. They're pretty secure. Don't think that's going to be going anywhere. And I got myself some rolling stock here just to run on the tracks and test. Seems to be pretty smooth. Not having any issues. Quite happy with that. And you can see now the distance between the trains and the bridge supports is definitely better compared to what it was before. I like that. And also got adequate distance between the tracks and the road. And somewhere down here I'm going to be putting a crossing in. Not 100% sure where that's going to go yet. And some of you might be wondering about these gaps between pieces of track. And don't worry, that's all going to be filled in. I've got over here, got some ties that I took out. Those will be cut and then just slid under the rails. But overall, this is really looking great. I want to get down to eye level here real quick for you guys. See that? Yeah, that's looking real good. Just for fun, I went ahead and set a train on the display. And I got my American Flyer 462 with some box cars. And I gotta say, if the turf and ballast were down and everything was painted, this would be a hell of a setup right now. But if you're building a display like this, now would be the time to start wiring in the tracks and anything else on the display that would require power. But I never do that with my displays, and on this one here it's pretty much pointless to even wire in the tracks because it's just a 4-foot length of track, and you can see a train like this, it's not really going to go anywhere anyways. But what I will do is start taking these ties and cutting them to start sliding in under the rails here where this gap is, you know, and of course that's up along this whole stretch of track. So go ahead and get that taken care of now. So I got my ties here ready to put on the display, and the way I modify these to work with what I want to do is I go ahead and cut off these extra bits of plastic here that are on them, and then these are the little spikes up top. I go ahead and take those off as well, both sides, and there we go. This is ready to fit in under the rail now. Alright, just start laying these in place, and they should just slide right under the rails. And then I will come back here afterwards and glue them in place. Now the method I'm going to be using to glue these ties in place, just a little bit of this glue, just a little bit right there, just to hold them in place, because when I go to ballast the tracks, I'm going to be using more glue anyways to hold down the ballast, and this here will just temporarily hold the ties in place till I get around to doing the ballasting. So there's the tracks on the display. Everything's been secured down and all the ties are in place. And personally, I think that looks very nice. Just going along there. You can see it goes to the back of the table. And just for fun, I went ahead and put the interstate together just to get an idea of how things are looking so far, how everything's coming along, and maybe play around with that a little bit and give me some other ideas of what I can do with this project. But one thing that does concern me about this table is, as of this coming Saturday, I'll have 2 weeks left to get this table done for the upcoming show in April. And I've still got quite a bit to do. Not 100% sure on how long it's going to take me to do. And I've also got a few unknowns on this table as well. This area here on this side of the tracks, I still don't know what I'm putting here. I never really had anything in mind when I drew up the plans. I just figured I'd put something in this area after I finished up everything else, but kind of running out of time. And this field over here, still not 100% sure how I'm going to do this. I still want to do a cornfield, but as to where to find 1/64 scale corn stalks or how to make some in a reasonable time frame, I just don't know. So, I mean, another thing is, other than being under a time crunch right now, I'm also dealing with lack of funds for this table. I got quite a few projects I want to do, but no money to do it. I mean, one example is I mentioned that I wanted to put a tree line here between the road and this field, and of course, I mean, I need money to buy the trees, but it's money I just don't have. And the hopes are that, you know, in the coming weeks I'll have some money to work with, but at the same time, it's like buying stuff online, how long are you gonna have to wait for it to be shipped to your door? So, I mean, I just don't know. Either way, one of those deals, I don't want to worry about it too much, because, you know, you start worrying, then you start stressing over, oh, I'm going to be done in time, then you're having anxiety, losing sleep, and it just takes the whole fun out of the hobby. So, you know, I'm hoping things will work out, and if they don't go as planned, I might have to make a few changes to this table to, you know, so it's going to be done in time for the show. But I think pretty much next thing to do is start laying down some turf and pretty much go from there.